Welcome, Sarah and Ty. It's good to be here with you.
Thank you. It's a treat that we can spend time this way for an hour.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Good to see you, first of all.
Yeah, good to see you. So we start here with something that I actually think that I learned from both of you, not surprisingly. If we could just start with just a brief personal check-in for each of you, just to land more fully in the space. And if you wanted to share how you're doing today at the levels of body, heart, and mind, and where you're joining us from today.
Go ahead. You can start, honey.
So I'm joining you from Portugal, our place in Comporta, which is really, really beautiful. And today in particular is really beautiful. So I'm feeling blessed for just the beauty of nature because we're looking at a lot of nature if I turn the camera around. So my heart is full around that geography. It's also full around kind of pretty much everything that's happening in our lives right now. It's a good place to land where we've landed, not only here, but we have a place in London that we're going back and forth to. So that's great. All the people in my life are, for the most part, healthy and doing well. So there's also a sense of, wow, in looking around at the landscape, the people around me, friends and family, things are going pretty good. So that's filling my heart as it would. And then I guess state of mind is here we are. Here we are.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you, honey. You mentioned where we are together, and we just got here day before yesterday. We've been spending a lot of time in London because I had a surgery recently in my shoulder. And that was and continues to be a big piece of the season of my life, being with the unexpected incapacity in this whole region of my body. And now it's numb from the surgery. And just today, just starting back to my yoga practice yesterday, the surgeon thought it would be 3 to 4 months. And I thought, it's almost been 6 weeks. Like, there are other ways to get back to a practice that you may not know about. So just feeling like the beginner's mind, the sense of identification with people who have lost facilities physically, and then the emotional difficulty of thinking that things are going to stay the same. Like, if I take care of you, body, will you take care of me? And then going, wait a minute, I thought we had a contract here. And so the unexpected, and living not with it as a concept, but as a reality. I'm good at letting people take care of me. So I've been well cared for these last 6 weeks. Ty, it's been amazingly supportive. And we were in London, where we live with our daughter and her boyfriend, and she and they are amazing cooks. So I feel like I've been nourished on many levels, just hanging out in quiet spaces together. And so I'm happy to spend some time in this way with you across the world and see where you're at and what things you want to bring forth for whoever's enjoying listening.
Well, I wanted to meet with you both today because I'm having these conversations around the release of my new book, Handbook for the Heartbroken. And Sarah, you were just a continual lighthouse and mentor through the several years that I'm writing about in the book. And as you have been over the past couple of decades and counting, and the particular heartbreak story that I wanted to highlight today, because I touch on in this book serial heartbreaks that I experienced between 2016 and 2020 that touched on every area of my life. And one of the final heartbreak stories is about coming to the place where I realized I needed to declare bankruptcy. And at that time, the only person that I shared that with was my mom and my bankruptcy lawyer. And this was the beginning of 2019. And I think it was in 2020 when I unexpectedly had to move in the midst of the pandemic. And as a result of that, I was unexpectedly moving back to Boulder. And as a result of that, I realized I needed to, find a new place to live, which was not part of the plan, because when filing bankruptcy, it can be then challenging to find new housing immediately after that. So that had me concerned. And then one of the places that I had applied to live in, they called my references and asked them about my bankruptcy. And those were two of my close friends who didn't know about it. And that brought up a lot of shame. And you and I had a session around that, helping me with that shame. And you shared with me that you and Ty had been through something similar many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even just learning that about you, even though it had been many years ago, and kind of dialoguing more about it started to help loosen up the shame more. And I wanted to have this larger conversation because I think that out of all the things in my book, there are some taboo things in there, like a heartbreak story about an abortion. But I think the most taboo thing is bankruptcy. And we all can have a tendency to carry a lot of money shame around various things, whether it's bankruptcy or something else. So I just really wanted to illuminate this and help to just breathe more space into a topic that we don't often talk about publicly.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'd love if we could kind of go back to the time when this happened for you. So for me, it was 2019. And I know for you all, it was many years prior to that. Where do you want to start in returning to that time in your lives?
What do you remember?
Let's see. I think the first thing I remember is making some poor decisions based on magical thinking. And
It was
so
American Express, really.
it was American Express related. It was related to a bunch of different things, but
And you had to pay that off monthly.
yes, I mean, there's a wild story around that, but I think, and of course, this may not be the case for so many of your listeners, that they're just unforeseen circumstances, downright bad luck, um, just losing a job. But for me, it was making some decisions that, in hindsight, were clearly decisions that were um, hopeful as opposed to the reality of the scenario. And so, in that sense, for me, the bankruptcy was really cathartic. I don't remember right now being overly embarrassed. Ah. What I remember is part of this thing, this magical thinking did, this thing that we did, I did, but we did, was informing the entire community about it. This thing, this venture that we were, adventure. And so, in that sense,
No, this was Santa Barbara before.
this is Santa Barbara, honey.
Oh,
This
right.
is
And
Santa
so was
Barbara.
that. So was
Yeah,
that issue.
yeah. And
They were
so
related.
they were related.
Okay.
And so, so the shame was around the magical thinking vision not turning out. It wasn't so much the bankruptcy. The bankruptcy was that was the event that was precipitated by this just wrong view, essentially. And so that was the shame, is sharing with the community. And the shame partially was the community, even as they were
Yoga community.
supporting us, they were also warning us this could go sour. You know that, right? And at the time, the idea was, no, we don't know that. No, we shouldn't think that way, because in magical thinking, you just think about best outcomes. You don't really think about the full picture. And that was also what was needed to be seen as an upgrade to just maturing. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Trust in Allah and tie your camels. And so getting more practical, we were quite really dancing with what we wanted to do. Even if the resources didn't reveal themselves, we would just adjust the vision a bit. And we had a child by then. So we were growing up, but painfully, those kind of experiences that let you see oh, I didn't really learn how to do this piece very well. And I didn't calculate what will I need for such and such a year from now, or what is health insurance, for example, we were not having. And we thought, well, now we have a kid. It took us a while to really land on that. I mean, there were like a lot of things we were still acting as if somebody else will take care of that, won't they? Until we realized, no, this is on us. And when there's two of you, you can really assume the other one has it together. And so you just kind of ride the non-discussion about it. And so the bankruptcy just time for me felt like, really? That's legal? We can do that? That can kind of save us to stop the downward spiral of the pain and all the bills that accumulated. It really felt like a time when I bowed to the possibility that the government had this piece of taking care of you, even though, of course, like you were saying, oh, now we need to move. And now that's very hard to get somebody to want to lease to you when you didn't take care of your finances in the past. So a friend said, I'm the manager of this building. I'll just act like I saw your resumes. Don't worry, I'll get you in. And you do then need, the kindness of friends and strangers to carry you.
But before that, just to remind you, before that angel showed up, we ran out of money and had to get busy kind of getting, whatever we were doing to earn money again. And in that period of running out of money, we were at the mercy of the kindness of strangers. We were literally sleeping in people's, second bedroom or floors. And we made it an adventure because we had our daughter Imani with us, as if this is really a fun thing to be jumping from home to home, all the while, crying in the bathroom at midnight. So, yeah, just carry on. Just for the audience, it was a very painful and humbling time when you go from doing really well to, do you have a place for us to sleep?
Mm-hmm. And then what was your process like of rebuilding from there and just, learning more of those practical, grounded skills of planning and managing money and all those things?
Yeah, the resiliency of not having had enough to feel safe and comfortable made me feel like I was willing to do so much now, anything. I will babysit for you. I will do your laundry. I will, that feeling of
Paint houses.
whatever it takes. We got to that ground so that we could buy some groceries and pay our rent. So there was a humbling, what are the essentials? Well, we have each other. We found some humor and in the tears. And we had a young child who every day is a fresh day to just go to the park, which on the one hand, we felt responsible for really giving her a sense of safety emotionally. And then we went, okay, what about our physical ground? Let's get that in order. And learning about how other people did it. So I remember talking to my mom's boyfriend and him just giving us some guiding steps. Whereas I probably wouldn't have asked him 6 months before that event. We were just skipping along and then suddenly hitting that huge gully. And then it fell in and felt like a well that was empty. And then to just slowly build it up until we were buoyant again. That resiliency is something I don't regret. I'm really, when I look back and feel that now, I feel like there are so many uncertainties in life. And I remember that particular time when I thought, well, who really could teach me more about the impermanence of life? Oh, I'd read some about the Buddhists in my psychology courses. And so I really need to learn this in my cells, in the center of my heart. And so that's really when I became a genuine practitioner, through the suffering of that.
Yeah. I definitely relate to that. My bankruptcy came about through a combination of things, through an unfortunate series of events and some risky kind of gambles that I took. And it began with, I was debt free when the beginning of this heartbreak journey. And I took out a business loan, a $50,000 business loan, to help me as writing my second book took a lot longer than I thought that it would. And so earning income was compromised during that time. So I thought that was a healthy risk to take. And I had my plan for paying it off. And then my first heartbreak struck. And right after that, I was notified by the IRS that I was under investigation because of the way that my CPA had been filing my taxes. And he had been doing that for many, many people, but I was the one that they were looking at. So then I had this huge tax bill, all these back taxes.
Oof.
So then that debt doubled. And so that plan for paying off the debt shifted. And then I had these subsequent heartbreaks, and my capacity to show up and earn money in the ways that I was used to was getting more and more compromised.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where another gamble came in. I was 40, 41, and Sarah, you were part of this process with me. I really wanted to become a mother, and I was single. And so I just gave everything that I had to trying to get pregnant, and including money. And that didn't work out. And so on the other side of that, it was like, okay, none of these things worked out that I thought were going to work out. And how am I going to keep paying all these bills? And that led me to a similar place that you all are talking about, of just getting super, super practical and seeing how that kind of, I think some gambling is inherent in entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
but coming from as much of a solid foundation as possible, especially for someone who didn't have any safety net to lean into. There was no like extra income or no family money or, nothing else that could catch me.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I look back at that, that's now I see it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, just because of all the things that I put into place now that were not in place before, that maybe I knew about or hadn't like fully done. And that resilience that you're talking about, of just seeing that I could create a strong foundation for myself, and that I could still rise again, that I could still become stronger again as a result of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember speaking to someone I was actually working for and telling the story of the bankruptcy and what led to it and so on, because it's a great story. And I realized from this woman, the way I told the story was twisting the story in a way that really took the story all the way down to, and it's reminding me of what shame must have been there, the way I was telling the story. Because at the end of telling the story, she said to me, God, if that's what you're making of it, you're really losing out. You're losing something here. And it was a wake up moment. It was beautiful. And I realized, years later, I've come to say the attitude that we have towards any adverse reality is what's most important. The idea, Trevor Noah, everything's helping you. And that particular attitude wasn't there until that wake up moment. It's like, oh, I can see this story differently and realign my perspective on what comes now, rather than, I don't know, just trying to get a better way to earn money or be in the world that way. something fundamental had to change. I think our values quite literally needed to change at that point. And yes, as per your story, there were, as you look back, you put things in place that are really helpful now, and it shifted your values in some way, some important way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're gonna, yeah.
Mhm.
How would you say that your values shifted?
Well, they certainly shifted away from any sort of magical thinking, which is not to say that I don't fully embrace the mystery of how things arise, come into being, fall away, and so on. So I definitely believe that there's causes and conditions that you can plan, and then there's that thing that arises that can't be planned. It's you can't get there from here. You don't know what there is, quite literally, from here. Just your ignorance of the full extent of all the forces that there are out there that are coming together to make the next reality appear. So I think it was a beautiful shift for me from away from um, visioning in a magical way to visioning in a more practical way, which is not to say that my visions aren't also magical. I just don't rely on them in the way I relied on them then, which caused me to behave in a certain way that was relying on magic, not on vision, and then letting the vision go and perform its own miracle in our lives. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That shift from a perspective that can be carefree without a real sense of responsibility, it can become careless. And there was a way in we were being careless because for me, being young-ish at the time and in my early 30s at the time, I felt like I could see a couple of months ahead, but I wasn't really looking at any further horizon. Like even when we got married in my early 20s, and I think this was a part of that trajectory of my needing to grow up. I remember when you asked me to marry you, I thought, well, a party would be fun. I didn't really consider what I was committing to. It's worked out. It's worked in. It's been lots of things because now it's 42 years later. But there was just a kind of carefree hippie girl in there that now that I had a child and now that we had made some choices, involved some other people, that involved some kind of blind trust. And then that person even saying, you will thank me down the line, and feeling like you are not the person to tell us that. And not right now while we were completely in the quicksand of it. It was bad timing.
Based on trusting you.
Yes, right. Well, he walked away, not taking responsibility. And so there was like, okay, what is ours in this? And how I started to feel like, well, if I look at a further arc of my life, I have the blessing of some skills of sharing some body and energetic practices, but now I really want to go into the psychospiritual realm, because without that, it is going to just stay more at the gymnastic level and the youthful, my body works, not able to invite all kinds of people in kind of scenario. Whereas now I felt such hardship. I remember there were days I was as down as I'd ever been. And then my next new one-on-one client had just come out of suicide watch. And I felt like I can work with her now. I know that feeling of not wanting to be here because of this or that. And so I did feel like it matured me in many ways. And I knew there was a lot of work to do. There wasn't just the event. That was just you have a lot of work to do signpost in my psyche. And so I got even more serious about, if I want to care, a truly heartfelt existence, I wasn't just going to look for, how to be carefree. was going to care about the repercussions of my choices and pause more. I think we were so spontaneous. We needed to just take more time. Everything you say yes to has so many snowball effect of how you're going to have to show up and everything that you say no to. And so we had more gravity all of a sudden to do that. We were more here, more earthlings.
There is something about public humiliation that can be really
quickening.
I fully agree with that.
the
Yeah.
best thing. Like, okay, just take it all the way down to
All
ground
the way
zero.
down. I would go in to teach a class with all these people, two of them, which I'm living on their floor with, my 4-year-old, and they're cooking for us, and we have, no savings. And so this real sense of how are we in this all together? So actually, when we didn't hide it, because the community is who we turned to when we couldn't get a rental.
Mm-hmm.
Tell this friend who came along and said, I can get you a lease because I'm the manager. But before that, as Ty said, we were literally staying in people's living rooms or in their second bedroom. And there was just a sense of, this can happen to us. This can happen to you. Where can we support people? Where can we be supported? Like, I've just had this surgery. Some people said, well, let people take care of you now. I'm like, I'm all in for that. I love to relax and let just, watch the house get clean and someone cook for me. I'm not needing to do everything, be superwoman. No, no, no. So many areas that these hardships bring us later to, don't they? And in the midst, we need community, we need each other. We need to not feel ashamed for the fact that, we were blind to the repercussions of some of these choices, or they were choiceless because we were just moving through without pause.
Yeah. One of the things that I realized was how I was not putting myself first, not putting my own safety and security and well-being first. I was putting, having a child or putting my business. And so it was a real wake-up call that no one else is going to take care of me but me. Like, I have to pay myself first. If I'm working hard serving other people, it's like I need to be the one that receives the benefits of that first, not just send it all back out again.
Yes. Yes. And so how did that unfold for you?
Well, even just very practically speaking, just how I manage every dollar that comes in to my business. It's like, first it goes to me. First payment goes to me, and a big chunk of that payment goes to my savings and my investments. And that happens no matter what. That's just an automatic, so that I have a cushion, I have a safety net, I have a plan for my future.
Isn't that relaxing now?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
It is. I love it. And now it's like I've just gotten very much more savvy, much more interested in money and investing, and at a level that I wouldn't be here if I hadn't experienced this. And I'm able to support other women with it too, because I'd say most of the women that I work with have some significant wounds around money and don't have the practical skills in place that need to be there. And so I'm able to be a resource and offer support at both of those levels, the practical and the psycho-emotional pieces, and just the woundings that we have from our own experiences and then our lineages as well.
Yeah. So true.
God, I was just thinking of that particular point right there where you feel like you don't have the skills or the wherewithal to earn the money you need. And so at that juncture, you recognize, well, I need some training. And there we are back full circle. Now you need money for that training that's going to get you to the other side of your money woes. And you've gone bankrupt, so no one's going to loan you any money and so on. So there is a little bit of a vicious cycle that sometimes we can find ourselves in. And a lot of compassion for how that works.
The doors can close on us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The privilege when they don't.
Yeah.
And And I remember signing up for a workshop to learn more about some of these shadow sides around money. And I didn't have enough to pay for it. And I wrote the teacher, and he wrote back and said, well, clearly this isn't the right workshop for you right now because you can't afford it. You should live within your means. And I remember
It was
reading
very
that going,
sobering, yeah.
oh, that's exactly what I'm meaning to learn from you. And you're helping me learn from you by not coming to your workshop. Okay, right. And then I looked for another one, and there was a scholarship and a payment plan. And then I thought, okay, so this is the one for me, not the one that's really expensive with the great teacher that I just want to go be with. It was really interesting to be turned away and realize, okay, where's the next place for support? Doesn't mean that there won't be any anywhere, but where is it for me right now? And to kind of keep that light of possibility lit often needs friends and sometimes mentors or therapists, but they often cost money. And so no longer can we turn towards them at those times sometimes.
Yeah.
It can really be a lonely and scary place.
I
Uh,
definitely experienced that too. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ty.
I was just going to say, we have had each other, and the one thing that's made the relationship work as well as it has is we've always been, as I say, in the same sphere of reality and in each other's corner deeply. And so when you mentioned these heartbreaks and you're going at it alone, I mean, again, a lot of compassion for the chutzpah. You
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
We could turn to each other.
Yeah.
And be delusional together.
And that too.
Total delusion. Yay.
Yeah. And
That's
you
also
could,
something that I write about in my book because like towards the later heartbreaks, I didn't have the financial resources that I needed to invest in support, to get support. And I was single and it just on my own. And it was very, very challenging. And it also helped me now to have more compassion to people who are struggling and to offer, to have scholarships in place, to have all that in place, because in ways that I didn't before, because I experienced something similar. It's like I would reach out for support and see who would offer scholarships, who would offer, pay what you can or payment plans, and who just said, no, we don't do that.
Right. And being willing to keep looking when we keep hitting a wall like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of inner resiliency of I'm not going to give up here. I need support.
Yeah.
well, to add to that too is I think a lot of people talk about shame are ashamed to even ask for a discount. In fact, I know that's the case because many people have said later, if I'd known you offered a discount, I would have.
Yeah.
So,
And then you advertise it, and if 3/4 of your practice are all paying very low, then you can't pay your mortgage. So I understand how we all have to weigh all of these things, getting paid versus what we pay for. And we don't often have role models for that. And so we learned through hardship sometimes. And now you especially with this new book and with the women that you mentor, you are in a mother matrix role of being the model of, yeah, it can be really hard. And some of these things you can learn from me. You don't have to learn yourself. And you can have support from me that I didn't have, that I want to be for you. And I think that's a beautiful offering. From the depths of the wounds come this real ability to be gracious and giving and more available in a wider spectrum than you were before you experienced all this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Ty, it seems like you're about to say something.
just, I was just thinking about some of the arrogances in terms of my beliefs back in those days. What happened really needed to happen. So the realignment of, as I mentioned before, the view, a new view had to emerge to bust this view that had some arrogance in it around seeming to know how things go or seeming to know how things work, pretending.
So something that I have long admired about both of you is integration, how you have depth of practice, you have a great marriage, and you have a solid business, a solid service to the world that really benefits others and also allows you to have the kind of lives that you want to have. So what are some of the key things that you put in place just in terms of money practices to help you to rebuild, to kind of create or to have the life that you have now and to have the work that you have now?
Well, one thing that I remember, I think you're remembering too, was a benefactor.
Yes.
A student who,
That's what I was going to say.
in small class situations, because they were small, we were just getting started in a new landscape. We moved to a new town, and it was a blessing for her to say, how can I help? Is there any way in which you need some support? I love the yoga that you're teaching. And we said, well, we'd love to teach in a retreat setting, but we can't afford the deposits. And she said, well, let me do that for you. I'll rent the retreat center. And then we then made flyers, attracted people, and with the money we made, we paid her back. And with a little extra, we rented it for the following year. So we didn't make money for a while, but we broke even so we could start bringing a community together in more than just drop-in class settings. And that kind of started.
So there we are again.
Started us.
We're talking about angels showing up.
Right.
So
I will always remember the blessing of her.
yeah.
She's not in our life anymore. She's just that little
Disappeared.
window.
It was just that moment that she showed up, did this whole, gave us a business plan essentially.
So often
Because
you
she
need
was
some
an
capital,
MBA and
right?
and was very wealthy and said, okay, if that's what's stopping you, there's no need. Because I explained, since I was the retreat manager, we had done just one retreat at that point, as I recall.
I think we paid out of our pocket.
We paid out of our pockets.
We not only did we not
Yeah.
break even, we spent to have people have a good week.
Good news is that was the only time. But anyway, I think she was on that retreat, and she said, "This is a really incredible thing. Offer more of them." And we explained we cannot offer more because we need to rent the sites.
We can't
And they are a year out. They're
ourselves.
booked a year out back in the day. And she said, okay, so that's how that came about. And now we're just on that roll. I mean, the inertia of that time, our teachings, the amount of people that know, especially her and now us, it's had the snowball effect. And then of course, creating the Institute.
But we had people work on trade
And
for
a
long time.
Yeah.
Where if they're enjoying the teachings, here's what we can offer you to come for free, and your skill would be helpful for us. Like this woman saying, don't think of it as just a handout. You can pay me back. And we were so proud to pay her back so soon. And then we thought, okay, here's a model we can live with. Let's get other people in place to help us figure out how to advertise the retreat and so on. And so now we have paid team, but we're 35 years in to the Insight Yoga model. And then our institute became more of a business in 2010 where people could graduate. But we had people in place to help us. So we did a lot ourselves until it almost, broke our marriage because our lists were different for each other. And it was I want you to do my list yesterday, and it's still at the bottom of your list for next week.
So this is the problem with the entrepreneur is early on, there really isn't the money to support having all the support you need. And so I was up to here. And for years, I remember was it your birthday? I just said, I want to be you. Not meaning that I wanted to to do what you did particularly, but I wanted to have me as the support for me, another me. And
so we made a list of students that might, and I thought I'll just start at the top of the list. Maybe one of these 10 has a few hours to help to take it off your hands.
And part of the point here is
things.
it did. Part of the point here is And this doesn't have to be the case, but maybe this is just how we operate. This is certainly how I operate. It had to get to a crisis before I was willing to let go. Because this is what happens with building a business too, is there's kind of a mission creep. As it gets going, more is involved. You don't necessarily have the money yet, but you can see the potential, but you're doing more at that point, answering phone calls, emails, all the minutia. And the minutia was really just beginning to create a life entirely out of balance.
And when
So
I would suggest we find someone, you'd say, well, I don't even have the time to train someone. I said, well, you'll have to go through that suffering to get to a new paradigm. So I'm writing them today. And you were like, don't do it today. And I said, I'm doing it actually right now. And I remember I went into with the computer. It's like,
and that's the
I'm not
thing.
sleeping until I do this.
And that's the thing. Sometimes we need to be forced.
From some, yeah,
We can't
there's
see
an
it.
intervention.
Because again, as you said, the idea of adding more to train someone felt like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna just put myself
So overwhelming.
so overwhelming.
Yeah.
I can't do what I have to do, let alone think about the time it would take to train someone. But as it turned out, it was just my folly. The reality is, yeah, Greg came in. Yeah.
Sometimes delusions together, and sometimes one person steps and sees a little clearly and has to drag the other one. I mean, we've trade rolled it many times in that way. Friends can do it, partners, but the compassion for those that are doing so much on their own without that give and take or that push pull, that's it's a longer journey for sure. It's
Yeah.
quick when there's somebody else to kind of push you into another perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. And how we need to do that before we feel like we're ready. Take that leap of faith of getting that support.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the dynamic.
Yeah, it's really, again, there's humility is needed. We think we know. Just at whatever level we're operating on, we think we know the rules, we know the full terrain, and it's just not ever the case. We're always bumping up against some level of ignorance, something we just don't see or know yet. And so, yeah, it's really great to have spiritual friends, therapists, counselors, coaches, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And so on this topic of money shame, whether someone's listening who has experienced bankruptcy, is in the midst of it, is considering it, or something else that's causing them to feel shame around their money, what is there anything that you would share with them to help them just begin to take steps to heal that?
Well, in the midst of the choice to declare bankruptcy, learning about the repercussions were important. I wanted to know everything up front. I used to jump in and then I'll learn later. And that was what that experience taught me was, well, let me see what choice I'm making. And this was something that was followed us for 10 years. I don't know if it's still like that. But that was a long time on our record. And so we knew what we were up against, and we knew we would have to figure out to rent someone's back cottage who knew us, because it's going to follow you around. And that may look different depending on the kind of lifestyle people have. Because we didn't need it for, like, you took out a business loan, and we instead had a student who said, without any sign the dotted line here, let me just pay for that. And so it also depends on the lifestyle somebody has. And ours was still quite loose. We offered what we did. People paid us cash or a check, and that was that, And so to look at the paradigm and the whole, the kind of center of gravity of your life, what is, if money is the issue, what is it that you most feel would give your life a real sense of meaningfulness? And are you involved in it today? Or are you feeling like it has to be earned? Like you've got to figure out money, you've got to figure out relationship, or you have to be able to have a child before you actually can earn living within the daily life that you most feel is of value. And so I do still feel like not postponing the preciousness and the impermanence of the life you're in the midst of with all of these difficulties and concerns as part of the context of that.
Yeah. All right. To add to that, there's certainly an emotional component to failing, as it were, because that's the sense of it. And it's, as I said earlier, about reworking the perspective on just the word failing. I like to say we're constantly failing our way into success. And I think that's actually true. And again, I think it's the approach that's really important. The approach of everything is helping you, even though this seems like all of this, oh my God, how could this be helpful? How could this be at all taking me in the right direction? But I think that change in attitude helps us to really begin to look at the silver linings that are almost always there. And so a new relationship to this word called failure, because it's just, we're all, as I said, ignorant until we're not, until we learn that thing that gets us to the next place.
I like that sense. What that reminds me of is that sense of in the midst of the difficulties, along with finding pieces in your day where you're not consumed by the issue. When you are turning towards it or faced with it, to really go all the way into the sadness and fears related to it. That's as generative as the times when you're celebrating and you're expanding in a joyous way. That there's something about the life lessons that take us all the way into some of the harshest and most painful emotions of our humanness that are generating a quality of potency in a way we would prefer not to have it happen. But if we surrender to it and really go, what is here for me each morning when we wake up, and actually make it an invitation, like teach me what I need here, because I'm in the darkness with this, to kind of ask for support into that unknown dimension, that we start to recognize things that we wouldn't have been able to listen to before we were taken all the way in like this and all the way down. And in that, I think we can all three of us look at where we are now and say, all of that was so valuable and so important for who we are today. And the things keep happening. It's not like, oh, that money issue isn't my central issue, but I have others. You have others. Oh, and like this surgery, it's like, yes, there's the physical, there's the energetic. It's along the lung meridian, so that's related with sadness. It's on the side of my body that's related to the feminine. So it was like all the areas I wanted to be with through this, which meant tears and sleepless nights and discussions with women in my life and wishing I could have discussions with some other women in my life and can't. All of it. Like each day, like show me what else I need about this issue since it's still here. It's clearly still mine to be with. And that renewable willingness, that needs encouragement and support. But that seems invaluable.
And that's what the three of us share, to be sure, is a practice that allows for that space to be able to enter that space confidently and rest there for as long as it takes.
Adversity taken onto the path. That's like the basis of the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma. It talks about dukkha from the start. The first noble truth. There is and there will be dukkha.
Yeah. And within the dukkha is the liberation.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you allow it to
if
be.
you allow it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you'll only get more subtle of the same. So you can't just think, oh, I'm over that one. There'll be a new bubble now, because it kind of comes in other guises, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the resistance gets more subtle. The things that arise that you think, oh, I've dealt with that. And then you see your arms starting to slowly fold
Or, yeah, in another way, like it can look like an opportunity. And if you say yes to it, you realize, oh, wait, this is the same thing that took me down before. I remember the issue with, that man that I trusted that reminded me of my father, who I didn't trust. And then thinking I learned enough from this man. And then another man coming up to offer me something. Remember that time I was by myself in Hawaii, and it took me a while to see, oh, this is just similar. It's just looking really more palatable. I need to pause.
It's the upgraded version
Upgraded version. What you said, like I need
of
to
your
take
demon.
responsibility for myself.
Your demon gets more
To make the
clever.
demon a daemon, I had to really say, I'm not going to wait for a man to come and give this to me. And that's why it was great when we come out of this that it was a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. For my particular cycles.
Mhm.
And then there were these other, now I'm carrying the scars of other things around women. I mean, it's not gender specific in some of us like me.
So what about not the people who are holding money shame necessarily, but people maybe who have anyone listening that feels judgmental parts around what we're talking about, or people going through challenging financial situations or bankruptcy or failures. Anything for people who are working with judgmental parts within themselves?
Yeah, we have to learn to befriend the critics, because they do carry a warning sign and they want to get the message across as an insight. But to get our attention, it usually has to be in some kind of extreme version of condemnation about some aspect of ourself that feels buoyant until we hear this voice that is criticizing us. So I often relate to my critic parts by saying, I really want to hear your message, but I need you to speak a little slower, a little softer, and a little kinder. And so the inner dialogue with the part whose message is worthy, but whose way with it needs to be managed. And so that's a kind of self-leadership, just to use IFS language, of like, wait, I'm not going to let you slam me anymore, because that doesn't actually heal the feature that I am attempting to learn from right now. But I do want to learn. So if I have trouble with that, who might help me relate to the fact that I'm just seeing myself in a harsh and horrible way? Who do I trust that won't just make me feel scared that they're just going to judge me along with my inner critic? If I can't handle listening to that voice and talking to it on my own, I want to have people in place who I deeply trust, see me in my totality, not just in my vulnerabilities and my shadow weaknesses. But I want to be able to go there and say, and sometimes that's us. A lot of times that's why our relationship works for so well. Sometimes it's a girlfriend or a sibling or a therapist.
And then there's the recognition, which I find really helpful, that beneath each part, the critical part, there is this basic motivation to make you a better person. And so if in terms of the befriending process, if I can remember or remind myself that this part is really trying to help, as bad as it's behaving and speaking to me, it's coming from somewhere. It's got a point of view that makes sense. It's a narrow point of view, maybe, but it makes sense within its worldview, and it's trying to help. And so then I can turn my attention toward it and go, I hear you, and I know you're trying to help. And kind of like what you were saying, going a little further, this is not so helpful. This is not, but I get it.
Tell
And
me the
that
essence of your message. What are you afraid will happen if you don't hunt me down and
condemn me.
yeah, and just stay as that harsh background voice or foreground voice? What are you afraid will happen to me? And then the part will usually reveal the vulnerability that it's afraid I won't take care of well enough. And so yeah, it's like a potential friend. And so until we're able to, for me, I take it from the background and bring it into the foreground and stop trying to distance myself from it and go, okay, I'm right here. You have my full attention. And I'm not going to rush with you. What are you really afraid will happen to me? What do you really hope I'll learn from this? And then we get these little nuggets, these beautiful insights. And so we can turn like the demon into a daemon in that way, into a champion of us when we have support to hear where we need to shift something.
So bringing that full circle, I think what the magical thinking was, in its essence, was, no, I'm not going to listen to any negative voice around this, whatever this is. And the shift was, no, no, that's not the way to do it. That is not, that's absolutely not the way. The way is to go, I hear you. And yeah, I'm afraid of that too. And not but, and let's vision a little differently.
Mhm.
Let's speak a little differently. But I'm taking this fully into consideration.
Right.
And now
Yeah,
we've
it's
got,
like in IFS language, it's like you had a polarization inside of
yep.
the part of you is, or the parts that were engaged in the magical thinking were kind of drowning out or overpowering the ones who had concerns or fears. And so it's about just creating that equilibrium inside to let, and that self leadership to hear all the parts, all the voices, and then from there decide how we're going to move forward.
So true.
Mhm.
That the magical thinking predominance can be avoidant.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
You
that was
just,
definitely part of my process too, of just, yeah, just wanted to push away the fears or the
Oh.
doubts or are you sure we should be doing this? And
right.
Mhm.
And from our early years, this idea that if you go towards anything that isn't just the glimmer of the reality you want, you'll create that. So, this misnomer that to turn towards the worried parts or the fearful ones, that you'll just get more worry and more fear, rather than be able to extricate what's underneath this, isn't just that. There's actually some natural trepidation given one's history that needs support in order to carry forward in a healthier way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this basic sense that with the afflictive emotions, if we enter them, we'll get swallowed in some way. And so
yeah, and that's
that,
part of kind of like the false positivity or the like the manifestation.
Uh-huh.
And
The
yeah, that's gonna,
pre-treatment fallacy
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
that I'm going to just jump over this and then I'll have all the riches, rather than I need to go through my fears and my insecurities in order to have more secure attachment to all parts of myself.
And creating from our wholeness, like that real, like generative, sustainable creation comes from our wholeness.
And interesting, in our lives, we still take lots of risks. We still,
Yeah.
we've
So
lived
do
in lots
I.
of the world.
Yeah.
And we've fallen, and I know, okay, we're a little more um, forward thinking about it could be this, or this when we leap, but that's not going to keep us from leaping because we'll handle it when we get there. So it does create more of a buoyancy to have had, as you said, failed so many times that we go, it's just like that to get to where we want to go. A lot of it is going to be netty, not this, not this, but first I have to check it out.
And after saying all that, we do have a nice nest egg. So
Yes.
And we hold on
it
to it
makes a
well.
difference
Yeah,
to know that that's there. It really
right.
allows
Absolutely.
for a sense of freedom and
Yeah.
Exactly.
It can like relax that survival instinct.
Definitely.
And yeah. Yeah.
That kind of false,
So what's that, Sarah?
and that kind of false confidence that if you just imagine it will be enough.
Yes. Yes. So I'm very grateful that you all, I think I first you all were started talking more openly about the bankruptcy and during the pandemic. Maybe we were talking about prior to that, and maybe that was just when it applied to me. But I was really grateful for for your openness around it. And that has been inspiring for me because I think my my personality's preference would be to not, not talk about it with people or not be open about it. But I also want to be a role model and be a resource for people who are going through that or, something similar. And so thank you for modeling that and for being so open about your experience.
Yes. And for you, bringing this to such a wider conversation than just the three of us having one. I love that. I'm very up for difficult conversations. And so I feel like there's a way that we can feel more trusting when we realize we all have challenges, even though we all have gifts and in different areas that can look like they've got it so much better than me. Everyone here on the planet is in some kind of trailhead, learning something that can be really, really challenging and full of hardships. And so I think it is helpful when people are in leadership roles to honor that people need to hear examples that, yes, it was difficult in the past, and there's something each of us are probably in this very moment, even if we're not revealing it.
Yeah.
And it's just, especially as one gets older, it's so relaxing just to kind of let it all hang out. I mean, it requires so much energy to present,
Absolutely.
particular face. And so again, as one gets older and more practiced, you just realize uh, the extra attention that needn't be. And so you just begin to this is what you get. This is what's here. And okay, you respond to it or you don't.
I found too that in going all the way into the unseen dimensions within, the journey itself takes you through the facets of the personality that are unfinished, that are imperfect, that are unwise, that are unkind. And in willing to tolerate that there's an amalgam of multiplicity within me. And if I keep looking through that, and through that, there is this basic goodness within that I know is the natural flavor of my being. And so because I know it's mine, I know it's yours, and I know it's yours, and I know somebody who's behaving in deranged ways, it's theirs too, even if they don't know it yet. But once I had taprooted that experientially for myself, I no longer needed to identify with the facets of the personality to such a degree in order to feel like I need the world to validate that I'm okay by them seeing the best me. It was like, I've seen the best me. A lot of people will never see it if they only see me as a personality, and that's okay. That's okay. This personality has idiosyncrasies, unique on the Enneagram, and is, constantly growing and changing through struggles and through beauties alike.
So we're just pointing to the importance of self-acceptance.
And practice.
Yeah. And practice. We
Practice,
need
because you can't just
to
be a good person and it be enough if you only know the good personness of your personality affect, not your depths.
Well, thank you both so much. Thank you for your mentorship over all these years, and thank you for this rich conversation today.
It's been a delight.
Good to see you, Sarah.
Thank you for all of your work, all of your dedication to practice, and
For decades
continued
now.
relationship that we've had the privilege of having with you. The trust that you've shown through continuing to be in our lives. Really, I love that. Look forward to when I see you next.
Likewise, yeah.
Okay, bye for now.
Yeah.